Yo, it's your homeboy Chris. I'll get back with another episode of my One Piece discussion series. In this episode, we'll be talking about Haki. Haki. What is Haki? Haki is any technique that revolves around spiritual energy. Every living thing has spiritual energy. So, in theory, every living thing can use Haki. There's three forms of Haki. They all have some pretty interesting things about them, and I'm gonna go in detail about the interesting things and point them out. The first version of Haki is Ken Bunshoko Haki, and this in English stands for Color of Observation Haki. The way I interpret this Haki is it's like heat vision or thermal vision, but instead of seeing the heat of someone, you're seeing their emotions. You can't exactly see their thoughts exactly, like, because there's going to be way too many colors for different thoughts, but you can see their emotions, and you can use that to help you, figure out what they're going to do. And because you know what they're thinking, you partially know what they're thinking. It's like partial telepathy. You need a bit of, your own brain to sort of figure out what's going to happen next and stuff. Another interesting thing with observation Haki is you can also tell how much Haki someone has. So maybe some people glow brighter than others, or maybe they're more radiant, like the light shines outside their bodies, not just inside and stuff. So I'm not sure how this goes. So now that we've heard about observation Haki, wow, that's pretty cool. You can predict stuff. How can you use it in battle? Well, it's exactly like that. You can, by seeing what the person is thinking to an extent, you can predict what they're gonna do to an extent, and that's how you're able to be ahead of your opponent, because you can think of what they're gonna do. And so, like with Rayleigh, right? He was able to predict what Kizaru is gonna do beforehand, and that's how he was able to keep up with Kizaru. However, having observation Haki does not give you speed. So Rayleigh used his own natural speed plus his observation Haki. So he was like maybe 3-4 steps ahead of Kizaru, and he just used his regular speed to keep up. And why am I saying this? Well, Luffy has fought opponents with observation Haki, and Luffy didn't have observation Haki at the time, but he had Gear Second, and they couldn't keep up with him. And I think it was this one woman in Amazon arc, or both of them, whatever. Yeah, they couldn't keep up with him because he had Gear Second, despite having observation Haki. Wow, observation Haki sounds really powerful. So what's the flaw to this? Because it's gonna be ridiculous if everybody's predicting everything. Well, there are some ways to counter observation Haki, or to nullify it or avoid it or whatever. The easiest way is to make your opponent lose focus, because Chopper fought against this one guy in Skypiea who had mantra / observation Haki, but once the guy got surprised or shocked, he lost his focus and he could no longer use his mantra / observation Haki. Another way is you shut down your brain, which is what Luffy did. He did a sort of like drunken fist style, so Eno couldn't really see or predict what Luffy was gonna do, because when he sees Luffy's thoughts and emotions, they're not connected at all with what Luffy is doing. Another way was Luffy did some attacks in which Luffy had no idea what was going to happen, and likewise the same thing, Eno could tell, okay, Luffy's about to attack, but he couldn't tell what Luffy was going to do, because even Luffy didn't know what he was going to do, and that was with the ricochet punch, where Luffy just punched at random and the fist flew everywhere and Eno just couldn't keep up. Those are the basic ways. Now there is two things that are interesting. I'm not sure whether they're connected or independent of each other. Now, when Luffy fought against the guy from Skypiea who plays with balls, Luffy was inside one of his balls and surprised them, and that again, with the surprise, he could no longer use his mantra, and then Luffy beat him with the surprise. But he couldn't detect Luffy when Luffy was inside the ball. And does this mean that light affects your color of observation haki, because remember this is color and color is a reflection of light. So that is strange, and maybe it's just something Oda overlooked. So we can make that an exception. The other one was when they were inside the snake. The girl inside the snake couldn't use her observation haki outside the snake, and Eno couldn't tell that people were inside the snake. Now my theory is, once again, like I said, it's like heat vision, but what would happen is Eno would see the heat, sorry, he would see the spiritual energy of the snake, and so he wasn't able to do anything versus the Straw Hats. I mean, well, no, you couldn't detect them rather. And so that's how you defeat observation haki. Those are the interesting things about it. Well, there is one thing really interesting about it that I haven't said so far, and that is, unlike the other two forms of haki, right? Observation haki seems to be pretty independent of your spiritual energy, your actual strength. So Nami and Usopp have very good observation haki. That's why Usopp is good at sharpshooting and Nami is good at detecting the weather and stuff. But does this also mean that well, what that means is it does some stuff apart from just being able to see someone's color. There's some other stuff you can't see, but I can't really put my finger on the non-living stuff. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I'm just giving. Yeah, so that's basically observation haki. Some interesting thing about it is that unlike the other two forms, it's pretty independent of your strength. So Nami and Usopp can have better observation haki than the strongest character in One Piece, or basically a character who has clearly stronger spiritual power than them. That's basically what I wanted to say. Moving on. The second version of haki is Buso Shoko haki. Now I'm gonna keep this short. It's basically armor, invisible armor that you make on your body, and oh, so how do you use this in battle? Well, just like any armor, having armor on makes your physical attack stronger, and it gives you better defense. Since it is haki, it uses spiritual energy, and since it is spiritual energy, well, like I said, it is armor, so it is physical, but since it uses spiritual energy, it is also spiritual, and it's this spiritual thing that gives it this very unique property. When you fight a Logia user, you're able to attack them, and that's because you're fighting them spirit to spirit. You're ignoring the physical part of it, or at least the spiritual part of your armor is ignoring it, and so it's a clash of spirit energy at that point. And that's how you're able to use Buso Shoko haki versus Logia users. There is a special version of, well, I won't really say special, but it's an advanced version of Buso Shoko haki called Buso Shoko haki Koka, and that stands for Buso Shoko haki, color of armaments hardening. Sorry, I didn't say it earlier. Buso Shoko haki stands for color of armaments. That's the English translation, color of armaments haki. And so Buso Shoko haki Koka is color of armaments hardening. And this is basically, it's no longer invisible because there's so much physical energy there that it turns to a glossy black. It's no longer invisible. It's so dense and strong. And yeah, it is basically a stronger version of armor, but it also revolves around spiritual energy, and it's both physical and spiritual. And we've seen it post time skip, and something interesting is we've seen that you can put haki around physical objects like Virgo did, or like certain characters have done. You can put it around certain objects that are not part of you. However, Virgo, you need to be holding the object for the haki to stay, because you're basically channeling it into the object. So projectiles, I'm not sure how this works with projectiles, because I'm assuming that maybe like Ben Beckman can pull haki around bullets and stuff. Yeah. So yeah, you can pull haki around physical objects, but you cannot put it around what do you call it? You can't put it around like fire or beams of light and all this Logia stuff. You can't do it unless it's a physical Logia like mud or soil or something. Then you can use it, but for like non-physical stuff, it's not gonna work because the armor, there's nothing for the armor to like sort of wrap around, I guess. Yeah, let's not get too scientific with it. I can probably think of a reasonable explanation, but Unless you really want one, don't then leave a comment and I'll reply. But let's just move on, right? The third and final version of Haki is Haoshoku Haki, and this stands for Conqueror's King Haki. Now, this is another interesting version of Haki. Well, it's the third and final version. Only 1 in a million people can use it. And what it is similar to Busoshoku Haki. It is both physical and spiritual. However, unlike, let's assume Busoshoku Haki is like 50-50, right? Haoshoku Haki is mainly spiritual. There's only like slightly physical, you know what I'm saying? So what it is, it's a sort of domination thing. So it's an intimidation thing. It's willpower versus willpower. So if you have high willpower, you can ignore it totally. If you don't, then you're gonna get knocked out because their spiritual power is gonna like overwhelm you and stuff. But if you have good spiritual power, you can brush it off. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And like I said, it has some physical properties. We've seen Shanks. Shanks is able to crack a ship and stuff with his Haki, with his Haoshoku Haki. And we've seen Ace was able to put out a fire with the physical force that came with it. Luffy was able to blow snow off himself when he was fighting Monet. Doflamingo was able to break ice. But the thing with the Doflamingo, he was able to break the ice, yeah. And one thing to point out was they said that it's related to your heart, because they said that Aokiji didn't freeze his heart, so Doflamingo was able to break out of the ice because of that. So that is interesting. The heart thing. And this is fueled by willpower, as I've said before. That's why the supernovas are immune to it, because when you have high enough will, you can ignore Haoshoku Haki from others. And going on to willpower, right? Yeah, that's all I have to say about those 2 forms of Haki. Well, not all, but most. That's basic. That's the general gist of it. And now for the extra stuff. Willpower and Haki. Willpower makes Haki stronger. That's basically what I'm getting at. And an example of this is Usopp. When he was Silver King, his observation Haki shut up the roof. He was able to do some crazy stuff that he regularly wouldn't do when he was at Enies Lobby, because he had the extra will to go that extra step. Likewise, Whitebeard during Marineford, he couldn't slash Aokiji, he couldn't slash Kizaru, but he was able to attack Akainu, and the reason being was Akainu just finished doing something, and that thing that Akainu just did made Whitebeard really pissed, and his Haki went back up, because his Haki was suffering from his health, because he had less will, I guess, from fatigue and stuff from his health, but his anger threw his Haki back up, you know what I'm saying? So willpower affects your spiritual energy, which therefore affects your Haki, which therefore affects your Busoshoku Haki. So Busoshoku Haki is affected by spiritual energy and training. However, your spiritual energy can be improved by willpower. And again, with Akainu, Akainu was able to ignore the attacks from Marco and Vista, even though both of them used Haki. What happened was his will to attack Ace and to get rid of Ace and Luffy was so strong that his spiritual energy was really high, and so when their spiritual energy clashed with his spiritual energy, he was able to basically shrug it off. But he could tell that they were using Haki, because he could tell that there was a slight clash, but his will was so strong that his spiritual energy was just like crazy strong, and like it did when they clashed, almost nothing happened. It was almost like you couldn't even tell that they were using Haki at first. If Akainu didn't say anything, you wouldn't be able to tell. And wow, that's everything I have to say about Haki really for now. And if you have anything to say in the comments, please leave a comment. Sorry for the long video. I tried to keep it short, but it is what it is. Thanks for watching.